The first golden light of dawn filters through the frosted windows of Olivia Chen's studio, casting long shadows across the weathered floorboards. Outside, waves crash against the main coastline, a rhythm as constant as her heartbeat. Inside, there is only the sound of her breathing and the occasional clink of her tools against porcelain. Olivia sits hunched over her workbench, magnifying glass positioned precisely. Her dark hair pulled back in a severe knot. Before her lies a shattered 18th-century Qianlong teacup, its delicate white fragments arranged in a pattern only she can see. The pieces are impossibly thin, nearly translucent when held to the light. The Japanese believe, she narrates softly to herself, a ritual she performs with each new piece, that when something has suffered damage and has a history, it becomes more beautiful. Her voice is steady as she applies a thin line of adhesive to a fragment no larger than her fingernail. Kintsugi doesn't hide the breaks, it illuminates them. With practiced precision, she lifts a small brush dipped in gold lacquer, her hand hovering over the joined seam. This is the moment of transformation, when breakage becomes beauty. But today, her fingers tremble unexpectedly, causing the gold to smear across the pristine white surface. A jagged, ugly streak destroying hours of meticulous preparation. For a moment, she stares at the ruined piece, her face unnaturally still. Then something breaks inside her. With a sudden, violent motion, she slams her palm against the workbench. Tools scatter, metal clattering against wood. Tiny porcelain fragments skitter across the surface like startled insects. Damn it! The curse echoes in the empty studio, foreign in her usually controlled space. Olivia rises abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. She catches her reflection in the antique mirror hanging on the far wall, a woman she barely recognizes. Tears streak down her face, though she doesn't remember beginning to cry. Her eyes are hollow, haunted by something beyond simple frustration. Some things can't be repaired with gold or anything else, she whispers to her reflection. Behind her, partially visible in the mirror, stands a silver-framed photograph on a shelf otherwise dedicated to ceramics texts and restoration manuals. The frame is turned slightly away, as if positioned by someone who needs its presence but cannot bear to look at it directly. Inside is the image of two identical women, arms wrapped around each other, laughing in the summer sun. Olivia and her twin sister Lily, their faces mirror images of joy now separated by an unbridgeable divide. Olivia's gaze slides away from the photograph, unable to confront it directly, just as she's been unable to confront so much else. She returns to her workbench, methodically beginning to gather the scattered fragments, knowing she will try again because restoration is all she has left. What she doesn't know, what she can't possibly know, is that across town, a man with haunted eyes is staring at a newspaper clipping with Lily's face, carrying a guilt that perfectly complements her own. Hello, my lovely souls. We all carry broken pieces, don't we? Those invisible fault lines that run through our hearts, threatening to split open at the slightest pressure. The cracks we hide beneath careful veneers of normalcy, hoping no one looks too closely. Sometimes I wonder if we're all just walking mosaics of damage, our broken places held together by whatever gold we can find. Work, art, routine, denial. What broken pieces are you still carrying? What would it take for you to believe they could be mended into something even more precious than before? Not erased or hidden, but transformed into the most beautiful part of your story. Share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes naming our fractures is the first step toward healing them. If this story resonates with you, please subscribe and join our community of beautiful, broken people finding their way back to wholeness. The nor'easter hit Port Haven with apocalyptic fury, transforming the picturesque coastal town into a battleground between sea and shore. Waves taller than houses crashed against the seawall, and the wind howled with such violence it seemed to speak in tongues. By morning, the coastal road to Olivia's studio was underwater, effectively cutting her off from her sanctuary. "Looks like you'll be staying in town for a while," Eleanor told her, peering through the gallery window at the horizontal rain. "The forecast says 3 days minimum." The Harbor Cafe became an impromptu community center as power lines went down across town. Olivia arrived late, soaked despite her raincoat, to find every table occupied with neighbors sharing stories and supplies. She scanned the room for an empty seat, her heart sinking at the prospect of forced socialization. "There's space here," a voice called from the corner. She turned to find Marcus Reid at a small table, his camera bag occupying the chair across from him. Their eyes met, recognition flickering between them from the support group meeting 2 weeks earlier. He moved his bag, a reluctant invitation she was equally reluctant to accept. "Thanks," she said, sliding into the seat. "Apparently my hermitage has been temporarily condemned by Mother Nature." "The road to your studio?" he asked. She nodded, surprised he knew where she lived. "You've seen it. From the Headland Trail. The old boathouse with the red door." He shrugged. "Photographer's eye. I notice details." Their conversation began with safe topics: the ferocity of the storm, the town's resilience, the quality of the cafe's coffee. She learned he taught photography at the community college. He discovered her reputation as a Kintsugi artist extended beyond Port Haven. The careful distance between them was maintained by mutual, unspoken agreement. When the cafe's lights flickered and died, leaving only the glow of emergency candles, something shifted. Darkness created an intimacy that daylight had denied them, as if the shadows offered protection from being fully seen. "I used to believe my camera could find beauty anywhere," Marcus said, his face half illuminated by candlelight. "In war zones, in poverty, in devastation. I thought that was my gift, seeing the light others missed." He rotated his coffee cup slowly. "Now all I see are shadows." Olivia studied him across the flame. "I spend my days fixing broken things because I can't fix what matters," she admitted, surprising herself with a confession. They fell into deeper conversation, discussing their artistic philosophies with an intensity that drew curious glances from nearby tables. Yet they performed an intricate dance around their real pain, each sensing the other's grief but respecting its boundaries. When they reached for the same candle simultaneously, their fingers brushed, a momentary contact that sent an electric current through Olivia's body. She pulled back as if burned, and saw the same startled recognition in his eyes. Whatever this was, it was dangerous. They retreated behind their walls, conversation suddenly stilted and formal. When the cafe owner offered Olivia the spare room upstairs for the night, Marcus abruptly stood, announcing he needed to get back to his apartment. "You're limping," she observed as he gathered his camera bag. "And it's getting worse out there." "Old injury. I'm fine." His tone closed the subject. "At least take my umbrella," she offered. "Keep it. I don't mind the rain." He paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Some of us deserve to get a little wet." Before she could respond, he disappeared into the howling darkness, leaving her with the unsettling feeling that she'd glimpsed something in him that mirrored her own carefully hidden damage. 3 weeks after the storm, Olivia delivered a commissioned Kintsugi piece to the community college's art department. As she passed a classroom, a familiar voice caught her attention. Through the doorway, she saw Marcus addressing a room of students, his hands animated as he described the interplay of light and shadow. Without conscious decision, she slipped into the back row, drawn by curiosity about this man who had occupied her thoughts more than she cared to admit. The classroom was dark except for the projected images on the screen, photographs of ordinary objects transformed by perspective and light. "Beauty isn't about perfection," Marcus was saying, his voice passionate despite the professional setting. "It's about finding the extraordinary in what others dismiss as ordinary or flawed." Olivia watched him move across the front of the room, his limp barely noticeable when he was engaged in teaching. His philosophy mirrored her own work so closely it was unsettling, as if they had arrived at the same destination from opposite directions. "Your assignment," he concluded, "is to photograph something broken in a way that reveals its beauty. Not despite its damage, but because of it." As students filed out, Olivia remained seated, suddenly self-conscious about her impulsive decision. Marcus noticed her as he gathered his materials, his expression shifting from surprise to wariness. "How long have you been sitting there?" he asked, approaching her row. "Long enough to steal your teaching philosophy for my next artist's statement," she replied, attempting lightness. "Why are you here, Olivia?" His directness caught her off guard. "I was delivering a piece to the art department and heard your voice." She stood, suddenly defensive. "I was curious. Is that a crime?" "No, but it's unexpected." His eyes studied her with the same intensity he'd likely used to frame a photograph. "You don't strike me as someone who acts on impulse. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think." The words came out more challenging than intended. An awkward silence stretched between them until Olivia broke it with an equally impulsive offer. "You should see my studio sometime, if you're interested in the Kintsugi process. For your photography." The invitation hung in the air, surprising them both. Marcus hesitated, conflict evident in his expression. She could almost see him calculating risks, weighing desire against caution. "I should stay away from you," he said finally, the honesty startling them both. "Probably," she agreed, holding his gaze. "I'm not exactly good company these days." "That's not what I meant." "I know," though she didn't, not really. Another silence, charged with unspoken complications. "Saturday?" he finally asked. "If the weather holds." "Saturday," she confirmed, already wondering if she would regret this breach in her carefully constructed isolation. Isn't it strange how connections appear when we least expect them? When we've convinced ourselves we're better off alone, safer behind our walls. Yet something in another person's eyes calls to us, recognizing our pain because it mirrors their own. There's something terrifying about that recognition, the way it threatens the careful distance we've maintained between ourselves and the world. The way it whispers that perhaps we aren't as invisible as we thought, that perhaps we aren't meant to heal alone. Have you ever found yourself drawn to someone you knew might complicate your carefully constructed defenses? Someone who made you want to risk opening up again, despite everything in you screaming to keep your distance? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these complicated feelings is the first step toward healing. Marcus arrived at Olivia's studio precisely at the agreed time, navigating the rocky path with careful steps. The converted boathouse perched at the peninsula's edge seemed to defy gravity, its weathered red door a defiant splash of color against the gray winter landscape. Olivia watched his approach from her window, noting his photographer's attention to his surroundings. The way he paused to observe how light played across the weathered shingles, how he framed the structure against the turbulent sea beyond. She recognized the professional assessment, having done the same countless times with objects she intended to restore. "You found it," she said, opening the door before he could knock. "Hard to miss the only structure crazy enough to challenge the Atlantic for dominance," he replied with a hint of a smile. His eyes catalogued her space with methodical precision, the immaculate workbench with tools arranged by size and function, the shelves of reference books organized by subject and author, the precisely labeled containers of materials. Then his gaze shifted to her living quarters visible through the open loft door. Books stacked haphazardly beside the unmade bed, clothes draped over chairs, mugs collecting on every surface. "Interesting contrast," he observed, "between the precision of your workspace and the..." He hesitated. "Chaos of my actual life," she finished for him. "You can say it. I'm aware of the irony." She guided him to her workbench, where a broken porcelain bowl awaited restoration. With increasing animation, she demonstrated the Kintsugi process, her hands steady and confident in a way they weren't in other aspects of her life. "First you must accept that the break has happened," she explained, fitting two jagged pieces together. "Fighting against it only causes more damage." Marcus watched intently, his camera forgotten at his side. "Then you carefully clean each piece," she continued, honoring its edges exactly as they are. "No smoothing, no altering. The break is part of its history now." She mixed the lacquer with gold powder, the metallic dust catching the winter light. "The gold doesn't hide the damage. It transforms it into something intentional, something valuable. She applied the mixture to the seam with delicate precision. What was broken becomes the most beautiful part of the piece. Marcus watched her hands work with growing fascination. "You come alive when you do this," he said quietly. She glanced up, startled by the observation and the intimacy it implied. "May I?" he asked, lifting his camera. Her instinct was refusal. She had spent 2 years avoiding being seen, let alone captured. But something in his expression made her nod. What followed was an unexpectedly intimate dance. Marcus directing her gently, asking her to demonstrate certain techniques again, moving around her to capture different angles of light across her hands and face. Gradually, her self-consciousness faded. She found herself explaining the philosophy behind Kintsugi with a passion she hadn't felt in months, even laughing at his dry observations about their shared artistic obsessions. As he photographed a completed piece on her shelf, his attention was caught by something behind it. Before she could stop him, he had moved the ceramic to reveal the silver-framed photograph of her and Lily. "Who is?" he began, then stopped abruptly, recognition flashing across his face. Olivia snatched the frame, returning it to its half-hidden position. "My sister," she said flatly, all animation draining from her voice. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, his face suddenly pale. "I shouldn't have." "It's fine." Her tone made it clear it wasn't. "I should get back to work." The warmth between them evaporated, replaced by the careful distance of their first meeting. Marcus gathered his camera equipment with methodical precision, respecting her sudden need for space while fighting what appeared to be his own internal battle. The door, he paused. "Thank you for showing me that broken things can still be beautiful," he said quietly. Olivia nodded stiffly, unable to meet his eyes. Only after he had limped halfway down the rocky path did she allow herself to watch him go, fighting the inexplicable urge to call him back. 2 weeks later, the community center announced Olivia's Kintsugi workshop, her first public teaching engagement since moving to Port Haven. Eleanor had arranged it without consulting her, presenting it as a fait accompli. "People need beauty right now," the older woman insisted when Olivia protested. "And you need people, whether you admit it or not." Marcus stared at the flyer posted in the college faculty lounge, torn between desire and caution. He had avoided Olivia since the studio visit, telling himself it was for her protection. The truth was more complicated. He was protecting himself from the dangerous hope she stirred in him. "You should go," his therapist encouraged during their weekly session. "Engagement with community activities is part of your recovery plan." "This particular activity comes with complications," Marcus replied, not elaborating. "When doesn't it?" she countered. "Healing isn't about avoiding complications. It's about learning to navigate them." The morning of the workshop, Olivia arranged 12 place settings, each with a ceramic cup, adhesive, gold powder and tools. When the door opened and Marcus entered, her hands faltered momentarily. Their eyes met across the room, his questioning, hers unreadable. As other participants arrived, Olivia shifted into teacher mode, explaining the history and philosophy of Kintsugi with professional detachment. She demonstrated the technique on a pre-broken cup, then instructed everyone to deliberately break their own cups. "The first step toward repair is accepting destruction," she said, watching as participants hesitantly tapped their cups against the tables. The sound of breaking ceramic filled the room, a strangely cathartic symphony. Olivia moved from student to student, offering guidance. She saved Marcus for last, steeling herself against the awareness that had sparked between them at her studio. His hands were surprisingly delicate for their size, but he struggled with the fine motor control required for the gold application. Without thinking, she placed her hands over his, guiding his movements. "Steady," she murmured. "Don't rush it." The electricity between them was palpable, drawing curious glances from nearby students. Marcus looked up, his face inches from hers. "I haven't created anything beautiful since I came back from Syria," he confessed, voice low enough that only she could hear. Maybe you're still in too many pieces yourself, she responded, the words emerging from some deeper understanding. Their eyes met in perfect comprehension, a moment of connection so profound it frightened them both. Olivia stepped back abruptly, moving to help another student while fighting to regain her composure. From the doorway, Eleanor observed the exchange, her expression a mixture of concern and hope. She had known Olivia since childhood, had watched her retreat into isolation after Lily's death. This was the first crack in her armor Eleanor had witnessed in 2 years. After the workshop, as other students filed out, Marcus approached Olivia with his camera. "I took some photographs at your studio," he said, showing her the digital display. Olivia stared at the images, stunned by what she saw. Not just her hands creating beauty from brokenness, but her face alive with passion and purpose. He had captured something she thought was lost forever. "I'd like to continue photographing your work," he said carefully. "For a potential exhibition. If you're interested." "A professional collaboration," she clarified, needing the boundary. "Exactly." His tone matched hers, though something in his eyes suggested they both recognized the pretense. "I suppose that would be acceptable," she agreed, ignoring Eleanor's knowing smile from across the room. Winter reluctantly released its grip on the Maine coast, surrendering to spring's persistent advance. As the landscape transformed, so did the relationship between Olivia and Marcus. Professional collaboration gradually becoming friendship, then something neither was prepared to name. Their work together provided structure and safe boundaries. Marcus photographed Olivia's Kintsugi pieces for gallery submissions, while she helped him rediscover his artistic perspective. What began as weekly sessions expanded to include walks along the shore, where they collected sea glass and broken shells that Olivia incorporated into experimental pieces. "Look at this," she said one afternoon, holding up a fragment of blue glass, edges smoothed by years of ocean tumbling. "It's been broken and discarded, but the sea has transformed it into something precious." "Like your Kintsugi," Marcus observed, photographing the glass in her palm, the sunlight illuminating its translucent edges. "Nature's version," she agreed. "No gold required." As April yielded to May, they established rituals. Sunday coffee at the lighthouse, impromptu picnics when the weather permitted. Heated debates about art and beauty that sometimes continued via text late into the night. Yet they maintained careful distance from personal questions, respecting each other's secrets by tacit agreement. The town noticed, of course. In a community of fewer than 3,000 people, their growing closeness generated speculation and, mostly, approval. Eleanor watched with cautious optimism, hoping Olivia was finally emerging from her self-imposed exile. When the town's Cherry Blossom Festival arrived in late May, Marcus convinced Olivia to attend. As pink petals swirled around them like snow, he photographed her, not posed or composed, but laughing spontaneously as blossoms caught in her hair. "You're beautiful when you forget to be sad," he said, lowering his camera. The observation hung between them, too intimate to acknowledge but impossible to ignore. Olivia stepped closer, drawn by something stronger than her fear. Their first kiss was tentative, frightened, hopeful, a question neither was sure they wanted answered. When they separated, the look they exchanged contained equal parts wonder and terror. By unspoken agreement, they didn't discuss what was happening between them. They existed in an eternal present, deliberately avoiding the past and not planning beyond the next day. Yet as their feelings deepened, the shadow of their secrets grew longer, threatening the fragile connection they had built. What neither acknowledged was the fundamental paradox of their relationship. The very things drawing them together, their shared understanding of grief and guilt, were the same things they couldn't speak about without risking everything. By early June, Olivia and Marcus had established rituals that anchored their weeks. Sunday mornings meant coffee at the Lighthouse Cafe, where they claimed the corner table overlooking the Atlantic. Wednesdays were reserved for afternoon walks along the shore, collecting broken objects that Olivia would later transform. These fragments, sea glass, driftwood, shattered shells, became the raw materials for a new series of mixed-media Kintsugi pieces. What surprised Olivia most was their growing comfort in silence. Unlike her marriage to Daniel, which had required constant conversation to maintain connection, she and Marcus could spend hours in shared quiet. He photographing the changing light, she sketching designs for future works. The silence between them felt substantive rather than empty, a language of its own they were both fluent in. Marcus's camera, once abandoned in his apartment, now accompanied him everywhere. She watched his eye for beauty reawaken, his photographs evolving from technically proficient to emotionally resonant. He began capturing moments most would overlook: an elderly couple's intertwined hands, children's footprints disappearing into the tide, the particular quality of light through storm clouds. "You're finding your way back," she observed one evening, reviewing his day's work on his camera display. "So are you," he replied, nodding toward her workbench. There, laid out in careful arrangement, were pieces of her grandmother's broken teapot, a family heirloom she'd kept wrapped in tissue paper since inheriting it. For 2 years, she'd considered it too precious, too personal to work with. Now, she was preparing to transform its brokenness into something new. Their first serious conversation about loss came unexpectedly, during a summer thunderstorm that trapped them in her studio. As lightning illuminated the churning sea beyond her windows, Olivia found herself speaking of Lily. "She was my twin," she said, voice barely audible above the rain. "Identical in appearance, opposite in nature. Where I was cautious, she was fearless. Where I planned, she improvised." Marcus listened intently, his expression revealing nothing of the recognition that must have flashed through him. "How did you lose her?" he asked carefully. "Car accident. 2 years ago." The edited truth hung between them, significant in its omissions. Later, as the storm subsided, Marcus reciprocated with his own partial truth. "Syria was supposed to be my last assignment," he said, staring into his coffee. "I'd been covering conflict zones for 15 years. Too long. I knew it was changing me." He described the explosion that shattered his leg but not the psychological break that followed, the months of rehabilitation but not the nightmares that still woke him screaming. Neither mentioned the guilt that shadowed their stories, the survivor's guilt they both recognized in each other without naming it. Their growing intimacy was built on shared pain, even with its deliberate omissions. The town noticed their relationship, of course. Port Haven thrived on gentle gossip, and the reclusive Kintsugi artist finding connection with the mysterious photographer provided irresistible material. The speculation was mostly kind. 2 wounded souls healing each other made for a satisfying narrative. Eleanor, however, watched with more discerning eyes. "You're both hiding something," she told Olivia bluntly one afternoon at the gallery. "Relationships built on half-truths have fault lines, my dear. We're giving each other space to heal at our own pace," Olivia replied defensively, arranging a display with unnecessary precision. Eleanor's knowing look spoke volumes. Space is one thing. Secrets are another. In late June, the Portland Regional Art Center contacted Olivia through Eleanor's gallery. The curator had seen her recent pieces and wanted to offer her a featured summer exhibition, her first major showing since leaving Boston. "I can't," was Olivia's immediate response, panic rising at the thought of such public exposure. "I'm not ready." "You are," Marcus countered when she told him. "Your recent work is extraordinary. The world should see it." His belief in her proved more persuasive than her fear. With reluctant agreement, she accepted the opportunity, and their collaboration intensified. Marcus's photographs of her pieces became integral to the exhibition concept. Not just documentation but artistic interpretation, creating dialogue between 2 mediums. The true breakthrough came on a rain-soaked Tuesday when Olivia unlocked the cedar chest containing Lily's possessions, items she'd packed away after the funeral, unable to face them but equally unable to discard them. "I want to incorporate these," she told Marcus, hands trembling as she lifted out her sister's cherished objects. A porcelain doll from their childhood, the jewelry box that had played Claire de Lune when opened, the hand-blown glass paperweight Lily had bought on their last vacation together. "Are you sure?" he asked, understanding the significance. No, she admitted. But I need to try. The process was excruciating and cathartic. Each deliberate breaking, the careful tap of hammer against porcelain, the controlled crack of glass, felt simultaneously like desecration and liberation. Marcus photographed every stage, his lens capturing not just the physical transformation but Olivia's emotional journey. Her tears, her determination, her gradual release. The exhibition took shape. Broken pieces, the anatomy of repair, Kintsugi works paired with photographs documenting their creation. The narrative arc moved from destruction through transformation to beauty reclaimed, telling a story of grief and healing without explicit autobiography. A week before the opening, a reporter from the Portland Press-Herald interviewed them at Olivia's studio. The young woman observed them with journalistic perception, noting their palpable connection in her notebook. "How did you two meet?" she asked innocently, looking between them. "At a community workshop," Olivia said quickly. "Through mutual friends," Marcus said simultaneously. They exchanged a glance, suddenly aware of the reporter's raised eyebrows. "Actually, it was at a support group," Marcus amended, offering a partial truth. "And then later at a workshop," Olivia added, equally uncomfortable. The reporter smiled politely and changed the subject, but the damage was done. After she left, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. "It's strange," Olivia said finally, "how many small lies we've told each other. And ourselves." Marcus nodded, his expression troubled. "After the exhibition," he said, not completing the thought. As the opening approached, his desperation grew. Each day brought them closer not just to professional recognition but to the moment when his secret would inevitably shatter what they'd built. Yet he couldn't bring himself to risk losing her before they'd achieved this one perfect thing together, this collaboration that had helped them both find their way back to creating beauty. Memorial Day brought Port Haven's annual celebration, a parade down Main Street, a community picnic in the harbor park, and as dusk fell, a modest fireworks display over the water. Marcus and Olivia attended together, their first public appearance as a couple at a town event. "We don't have to stay for the fireworks," Olivia said, noticing Marcus's increasing tension as evening approached. "It's fine," he insisted. "They're just fireworks." But when the first explosion burst overhead, Marcus wasn't in Maine anymore. The crack and boom transported him instantly to Syria, to dust and blood and screaming. His body reacted before his mind could intervene, dropping him to the ground in defensive posture, hands over his head. "Incoming!" he shouted, grabbing Olivia's arm with bruising force, trying to pull her down to safety. "Get down! Now!" Around them, townspeople turned in confusion and concern. Marcus's eyes were wild, unseeing, his breathing rapid and shallow. Sweat poured down his face despite the cool evening air. "Marcus," Olivia said firmly, kneeling beside him. "Marcus, you're in Port Haven. You're safe. It's just fireworks." He didn't hear her, lost in the vivid hallucination. When the next explosion came, he curled tighter, making himself smaller, a wounded animal expecting the killing blow. With calm precision, Olivia signaled to Eleanor across the crowd. The older woman immediately understood, helping create a buffer of space around them as Olivia continued speaking in low, steady tones. "Feel the grass beneath you," she instructed. "That's Maine grass. Feel the sea breeze. That's the Atlantic. I'm going to count and you're going to breathe with me. 1, 2, 3. Gradually, her voice penetrated his terror. His breathing slowed, his grip on her arm loosened. When his eyes finally focused on her face, they were filled with shame and horror. "Let's get you somewhere quiet," she said, helping him to his feet. They made their way through concerned onlookers to her truck. The drive to her studio passed in silence. Marcus pressed against the passenger door as if trying to disappear. Inside, she guided him to her worn leather couch, wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, and made tea neither of them would drink. "I'm sorry," he finally said, voice raw. I haven't had an episode that bad in months." "Don't apologize," she replied, sitting beside him but not touching. "I understand more than you might think." She described her own panic attacks after Lily's death, the moments when grief would ambush her, turning ordinary activities into insurmountable obstacles. How she'd find herself hyperventilating in grocery store aisles, fleeing restaurants mid-meal, pulling her car to the roadside, unable to continue driving. "Trauma lives in the body," she said. "It doesn't always listen to reason." Marcus nodded, his breathing steadier now. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, the words catching in his throat. "About the accident." The shrill ring of her phone cut through the moment. Olivia glanced at the display, the gallery in Portland, calling well after business hours. "I should take this," she said apologetically. "It might be important for tomorrow." As she spoke with the curator about final exhibition details, she watched Marcus's expression shift from resolution back to hesitation. Whatever door had opened in his vulnerability was closing again. When she hung up, he smiled too brightly. "We should both get some rest. Big day tomorrow." The moment was lost. Marcus retreated from the precipice of truth, making a silent vow to himself. After the exhibition, after they'd shared this one perfect achievement, then he would risk everything. We all reach that crossroads, don't we? That moment when we must decide between comfortable half-truths and devastating honesty. When we know that speaking our truth might destroy the very thing we most want to preserve. The words form in our mouths, heavy with consequence. We can taste their bitterness, feel their weight. We understand that once spoken, they can never be taken back, that they will forever divide our lives into before and after. Have you ever stood at that precipice, weighing the cost of honesty against the price of silence? How did you choose, and looking back, would you choose differently now? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone facing that impossible choice right now. The night before the exhibition opening, Olivia and Marcus worked late at the gallery, adjusting lighting and making final placement decisions. By the time they returned to her studio, it was past midnight, both of them exhausted yet too wired to sleep. "This is really happening," Olivia said, staring out at the moonlit ocean. "Tomorrow, people will see pieces of my soul hanging on those walls. And they'll recognize the beauty in them," Marcus assured her, standing close enough that she could feel his warmth without touching. The air between them felt charged, months of growing connection culminating in this moment of shared vulnerability and achievement. When Olivia turned to face him, the question in her eyes required no words. Their first kiss since the Cherry Blossom Festival was tentative, a gentle exploration. The second abandoned caution, years of self-denial crumbling under the weight of present need. They moved to her bedroom with unhurried purpose, each step a conscious choice rather than passion's blind momentum. Their lovemaking was tender, vulnerable, healing, a physical manifestation of the trust they'd built through shared creativity. In the intimate aftermath, Olivia traced the surgical scars on Marcus's leg, a roadmap of trauma etched into skin. She kissed each mark with reverence, honoring the pain that had shaped him. "No one has ever touched them like that," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Most people pretend not to notice." "I don't want to pretend with you," she said, the irony of her words lost in the moment's honesty. As dawn approached, Marcus reached for his camera on the bedside table. "May I?" he asked. Olivia nodded, allowing him to photograph her in the early light. Her body half draped in sheets, her face unguarded in a way it never was in daylight. The intimacy of being seen, truly seen, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "I never thought I'd feel this again," she confessed, the words barely audible. "After Lily died, I thought that part of me died too." Marcus set down his camera, gathering her close. "I was convinced I'd destroyed whatever made me human," he admitted. "That I'd never create anything but destruction again." They whispered confessions of feelings in the pre-dawn darkness, still dancing around their central secrets. Marcus held her with silent agony, knowing this might be their only night together. Once truth entered their carefully constructed sanctuary, everything would change. After he fell asleep, Olivia allowed herself quiet tears, not of sadness but release. For the first time since losing Lily, she felt something beyond grief. The sensation was so foreign she almost didn't recognize it. Hope. Neither spoke of the weight tomorrow carried. Not just the exhibition but the truths that could no longer be contained. Like the gold-seamed pottery they would display, their relationship had reached its moment of transformation, either to become something stronger at the broken places or to shatter beyond repair. The Portland Regional Art Center had never seen an opening like Broken Pieces. By 6 o'clock, the gallery was filled beyond capacity, with attendees spilling into the courtyard. Olivia's Kintsugi works, displayed on illuminated pedestals, created a physical journey through grief and healing. Marcus's photographs on the surrounding walls provided context and emotional depth, documenting the process of destruction and repair. The centerpiece stood in a specially constructed alcove, a shattered porcelain doll repaired with gold, its delicate face crisscrossed with luminous seams. Beside it hung a triptych of photographs, the doll intact but dusty from storage, the moment of its deliberate breaking captured in excruciating detail, and finally, Olivia's hands applying gold to its reassembled form. "That was Lily's," Olivia explained to a cluster of admirers. "The only possession I had from our childhood. We shared it, taking turns week by week." The revelation added poignancy to an already emotional piece. Critics moved through the space with reverent expressions. Journalists from Portland and Boston scribbled notes, and collectors discreetly approached Eleanor about acquisition possibilities. Olivia and Marcus stood together near the entrance, receiving congratulations with gracious humility. Despite her initial terror of public exposure, Olivia found herself energized by the response to their work. For the first time in years, she felt fully present in her professional identity, no longer defined solely by loss. "Ms. Chen," the gallery director called, approaching with a distinguished woman in tow. "This is Margot Winters from the Haverford Gallery in New York. She's interested in bringing the exhibition to Manhattan this fall." As they discussed logistics, Marcus watched Olivia's animation with bittersweet joy. This was what he'd hoped for her: recognition, purpose, a path forward. Their shared look of triumph and connection across the conversation contained everything they couldn't say aloud. Yet as the evening progressed, Marcus's certainty grew. He could no longer postpone the inevitable. Tonight, regardless of consequences, he would tell her everything. The weight of his decision was visible in his eyes, though Olivia misinterpreted it as happiness mirroring her own. As the crowd began to thin, he touched her elbow gently. "Would you walk with me along the shore after this?" he asked. "There's something I need to tell you." "Of course," she agreed, her smile radiant with the evening's success. "I have something to tell you too." Marcus nodded, his heart heavy with the knowledge that whatever she wanted to share would be overshadowed by his confession. The truth he'd carried for 2 years could no longer be contained, not if he wanted to be worthy of the woman who had taught him that broken things could still be beautiful. They walked barefoot along the moonlit shore, the warm June night a perfect backdrop for what should have been a romantic culmination of their journey. The exhibition's success hummed between them, critics impressed, collectors interested, a New York showing confirmed. Everything they'd worked toward had exceeded expectations. "I still can't believe it," Olivia said, her voice light with lingering excitement. "Did you see Margot Winters' face when she saw the doll piece? She actually had tears in her eyes." Marcus nodded, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Your work deserves this recognition. It always has." They continued in companionable silence, the rhythmic wash of waves against sand matching their footsteps. The beach curved gently ahead, following the natural contour of the coastline. As they approached a particular bend where the path narrowed between rocky outcroppings, Marcus slowed, then stopped completely. His body language changed, shoulders tensing, hands clenching at his sides. He stared at the spot as if seeing something Olivia couldn't. "This is where it happened," he said quietly. "The accident." Olivia looked around in confusion. "What accident?" Marcus took a deep breath, his face ghostly in the moonlight. Lily's accident. The name hung in the air between them. Olivia's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror as understanding began to take shape. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, though some part of her already knew. Marcus's voice became detached, almost clinical, as if the only way he could speak these words was to distance himself from them. 2 years ago, I was driving home from my first therapy session for PTSD. I'd finally admitted I needed help after months of nightmares, flashbacks, dissociative episodes. The therapist had warned me not to drive immediately after our session, but I was stubborn. Thought I could handle it. Olivia took an instinctive step backward as he continued. A car backfired on the road behind me. The sound, it was like being back in Syria. One moment I was on a coastal main road, the next I was in a war zone. Complete dissociation. His eyes focused on something far away, reliving the moment. There was an oncoming car. The driver swerved to avoid me. I drifted into her lane without realizing it. I heard the tires screech, saw her overcorrect. Then the terrible sound of impact as she hit the guardrail. Olivia's hand covered her mouth, her body beginning to tremble. I pulled over, ran to help. The car had rolled down the embankment, landed on its roof. I crawled inside, tried to help the driver to stop the bleeding. Her face, his voice broke. Her face was so similar to yours. I didn't understand why at the time. Tears streamed down his face now, unchecked. Her final words were, "Tell my sister it wasn't her fault." I promised this dying woman whose name I didn't know. Then emergency services arrived. I gave my statement. The investigation eventually cleared me of legal responsibility due to my documented condition, though never of moral responsibility. He looked directly at Olivia for the first time since beginning his confession. 3 days later, I saw her obituary. Olivia Chen. And at the funeral, from a distance, I saw you. I couldn't approach you then. Cowardice, shock, I don't know. But I never forgot my promise to her. Olivia's body reacted before her mind could process. She doubled over, vomiting into the ocean. Her body physically rejecting this unbearable truth. Wave after wave of nausea hit her as the full horror crashed down. The man she'd fallen in love with was the reason her sister was dead. When she straightened, her face was transformed by rage and betrayal. Marcus took a step toward her, hand outstretched. "Don't touch me," she screamed, the sound tearing from her throat. "You killed her. You killed my sister. Olivia, please. You knew who I was from the beginning," she said, the devastating realization dawning. "The support group, the workshop, all of it, you sought me out. Was this some sick way to atone? To make yourself feel better about killing her?" "No." Marcus's desperation was palpable. "I've been trying to find a way to tell you since the moment I recognized you at the support group. I just wanted to keep my promise to her, to help you understand it wasn't your fault. I never expected to fall in love with you." Olivia laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Love? There is no us. There never was. Just a lie built on my sister's grave." She turned and walked away into the darkness, leaving him on his knees in the sand, the sound of waves washing away her footprints as if she'd never been there at all. Olivia drove home in a fugue state, her mind unable to process the magnitude of what she'd learned. The studio that had been her sanctuary now felt like a museum of lies. Everywhere she looked, she saw evidence of their collaboration. Photographs Marcus had taken, pieces they'd selected together, sketches for future works they'd planned. Something primal and destructive awoke in her. With methodical precision, she began dismantling the life she'd rebuilt. First came the photographs, ripping them from walls, tearing them to shreds. Then the ceramics, piece after piece hurled against the floor, gold seams shattering, months of meticulous work reduced to glittering rubble. The symbolism wasn't lost on her, destroying the very pieces that represented healing, obliterating the evidence that she had ever believed broken things could be beautiful. Each crash of porcelain against wood was cathartic, each tear in paper a severing of connection. By dawn, her studio resembled a war zone. She stood amid the destruction, chest heaving, hands bleeding from countless small cuts, surrounded by the physical manifestation of her shattered heart. In the days that followed, Olivia spiraled into grief renewed and intensified. Flashbacks to Lily's funeral interspersed with memories of Marcus. His hands guiding hers, his voice in the darkness, his body against hers. The double betrayal was unbearable. First her husband, now the man she'd begun to trust. She couldn't separate her feelings for Marcus from her grief for Lily. They had become hopelessly entangled. The exhibition in New York proceeded without her. Eleanor stepped in to represent her work, fielding questions about the artist's absence with diplomatic vagueness. Family emergency became the official explanation, though rumors circulated in the art world. Olivia's retreat into isolation became more complete than before. She ignored calls, refused visitors, had groceries delivered and left at her door. The town's concern manifested in small gestures, casseroles appearing on her porch, notes of support slipped under her door, Eleanor's daily check-ins that went unanswered. Her work changed dramatically. Where once she had created order from chaos, now she embraced disorder. Her new pieces were deliberately unrepaired, broken ceramics arranged in jagged installations, sharp edges exposed, gold replaced with black resin that emphasized rather than transformed the damage. The physical manifestation of her emotional state was undeniable. Broken things left broken, wounds deliberately kept open. By November, Eleanor had had enough. She arrived at Olivia's studio unannounced, using her spare key when knocking went unanswered. She found Olivia working in an unheated space, the main winter seeping through poorly insulated walls, her breath visible in the frigid air. "This has gone on long enough," Eleanor said, turning on the neglected heating system. "Go away," Olivia responded flatly, not looking up from the broken vase she was coating with matte black paint. "You're punishing yourself for loving him, not just for Lily's death now." Olivia's head snapped up, eyes flashing. "He deliberately deceived me. He knew exactly who I was from the beginning." Eleanor pulled up a stool, settling in despite Olivia's glare. "Yes, he did deceive you. And you deceived him too. You both built a relationship on half-truths because you were too afraid to face the whole truth. My lie didn't kill anyone," Olivia hurled back. Eleanor's voice softened. "No, but your lie to yourself, that Lily's death was your fault, has been killing you slowly for 2 years." The words landed like a physical blow. Olivia turned away, unable to face their truth. Marcus retreated to a remote cabin further up the coast, a dilapidated structure he'd purchased on impulse months earlier as a potential weekend getaway for himself and Olivia. Now it became his self-imposed exile, a place to contain his grief where it wouldn't touch anyone else. He resigned from his teaching position, citing personal reasons. His withdrawal from the photography community was so complete that former colleagues eventually stopped reaching out. Days blurred together, marked only by the changing light over the ocean he spent hours staring at. Nights were worse, plagued by nightmares that now featured not only war zones but Olivia's face contorted in hatred and betrayal. The dual guilt consumed him, both for the accident that took Lily's life and for the deception that destroyed whatever chance at healing he and Olivia might have found together. His therapist remained his only regular human contact, their weekly sessions now conducted by phone. "You need to find constructive channels for your remorse," she advised during one particularly difficult session. "Punishment isn't atonement, Marcus. It doesn't help Olivia, and it doesn't honor Lily's memory." Her words, though initially rejected, eventually took root. In December, Marcus established an anonymous scholarship in Lily's name at the art school she had attended, endowed with the proceeds from the sale of his conflict photography archive to a prestigious museum. He began compiling a complete account of the accident and its aftermath, not as justification but as the complete truth Olivia deserved. The letter ran to dozens of pages, detailing everything from his initial PTSD diagnosis to the moment he recognized her at the support group, from his internal struggle over whether to tell her to his growing feelings that complicated everything. Alongside the letter, he gathered all the photographs he had taken of Olivia, hundreds of images documenting her process of healing before he shattered it. He selected the most revealing ones, the moments when her focus on creation had temporarily lifted the weight of grief from her shoulders. The package, sent to her studio with no return address, represented his final communication, offered without expectation of forgiveness or response. It was, he believed, the only honest thing he could give her now. As winter deepened, Marcus gradually accepted that some damage cannot be repaired, some breaks are permanent. Yet even in this acceptance, he found a path forward. He returned to photography, but with a new focus, documenting broken things in nature and their natural processes of decay and renewal. Fallen trees becoming nurse logs for new growth. Tidal pools formed in the cracks of boulders. Abandoned nests repurposed by different species. These images, unlike his war photography, contained no human suffering, no moral ambiguity. They simply witnessed the world's endless cycle of destruction and creation, a process that continued regardless of human grief or guilt. In documenting this cycle, Marcus found the beginnings of his own healing, separate from any hope of reconciliation with Olivia. There are moments that divide our lives into before and after, revelations so profound they alter the very foundation of who we are and how we see the world. A single conversation, a medical diagnosis, a confession that cannot be unheard. In these moments, everything we believed about ourselves and others shatters like porcelain against concrete. The narrative we've constructed about our lives reveals itself as partial truth at best, willful delusion at worst. When the truth shatters everything you believed, how do you begin to gather those pieces? Is it even possible to create something new from such complete devastation? Have you experienced a truth that initially seemed too painful to bear, but eventually led to a deeper understanding or healing? Share your journey in the comments. If this story resonates with you, please subscribe to join our community of people finding their way through life's most challenging moments. On the second anniversary of Lily's death, Olivia woke before dawn. The date had been approaching like a storm on the horizon, growing more ominous with each passing day. Now it was here, and she had nowhere left to hide from its fury. Her studio remained in disarray, though the initial destruction had been cleared away. Marcus's package sat unopened on a high shelf, where she'd placed it upon arrival 3 months earlier, unable to discard it but equally unable to face whatever it contained. She had planned to create a memorial piece for Lily, something that might channel her grief into creation rather than destruction. But each attempt failed, her hands betraying her vision, materials resisting her will. By midday, the floor was littered with abandoned starts, clay malformed, adhesive improperly set, gold lacquer applied too thickly or too thinly. "Damn it, Lily," she whispered, hands trembling as she attempted once more to join 2 fragments of porcelain. "Why can't I get this right? Why can't I make something worthy of you?" When this attempt too failed, something broke inside her. With a cry of frustration that became a howl of grief, she swept her workbench clean, tools and materials clattering to the floor. She seized half-completed pieces and hurled them against the wall, watching them explode into fragments. In her frenzy, she grabbed a sharp shard of porcelain, not feeling it slice into her palm until blood dripped onto the clay beneath. The sudden pain stopped her rampage. She stared at her bleeding hand with detached fascination, the physical pain almost a relief from the emotional torment she'd been carrying. Surrounded by destruction of her own making, Olivia collapsed to the floor. Blood mixed with clay beneath her as she curled into herself, finally allowing the full weight of everything she'd been suppressing to crash over her. The grief for Lily, the betrayal by Marcus, the guilt she'd carried for 2 years, the love she couldn't eradicate despite everything. The primal scream that tore from her throat contained all of it, raw, unfiltered emotion too powerful for her body to contain. It echoed across the empty studio and out toward the winter sea, heard by no one but the indifferent waves. Or so she thought. The studio door opened quietly, admitting Eleanor. The older woman took in the scene. The destruction, the blood. Olivia curled on the floor, without surprise or judgment. She simply crossed the room and sat on the floor beside Olivia, her arthritic joints protesting but her determination unwavering. "I had a feeling," she said simply, offering a clean handkerchief for Olivia's bleeding palm. Olivia accepted it, pressing the cloth against her cut. "How did you know?" "I've known you since you were born, child. You and Lily both. I know what this day means." The mention of her sister's name broke something loose in Olivia. Words she'd held back for 2 years suddenly poured out. "I called her," she confessed, voice raw from screaming. "She was at her dream job interview. I knew how important it was, but I called her anyway because my marriage was falling apart." Eleanor nodded, listening without interruption. "She dropped everything for me. She always did. And she died because of it." Olivia's voice broke. "And now I've fallen in love with the man who was driving the car, and I don't know how to hold both those truths at once." Eleanor's weathered hand covered Olivia's. "By accepting that life is broken and beautiful at once. That's what your art has been trying to teach you all along." Olivia's gaze drifted across the destroyed studio, eventually landing on Marcus's package among the debris. It had fallen from the shelf during her outburst, its careful wrapping now dusty and torn. "I can't," she whispered. "You can," Eleanor countered gently. "You're stronger than you know." With trembling hands, Olivia reached for the package, making the decision to finally face whatever truth it contained, the last piece of the puzzle she'd been avoiding for too long. Olivia stared at the package in her lap, dust from the studio floor clinging to its brown paper wrapping. Her hands trembled as she carefully peeled away the tape, uncertain what she would find inside but knowing she could no longer avoid it. Photographs spilled out first, dozens of them sliding across her legs and onto the floor. Images of her working at her bench, laughing with Eleanor, demonstrating Kintsugi techniques to workshop participants. Marcus had captured moments she barely remembered living. Her face animated with passion as she explained the philosophy behind her art, her hands steady and confident as they applied gold to broken seams, her rare smile when a particularly challenging repair succeeded. Beneath the photographs lay a thick manila envelope. Inside was a letter, not the brief note she had expected, but a comprehensive document running to nearly 30 pages, handwritten in Marcus's precise script. "Olivia," it began simply. "This is the complete truth. All of it." What followed was a detailed account that held nothing back. The accident itself was described with excruciating precision, the car backfiring that triggered his flashback, his momentary dissociation, Lily's vehicle swerving to avoid him, the terrible sound of impact. He described crawling into the overturned car, the blood on his hands as he tried to help, Lily's face looking up at him with an expression of calm acceptance that still haunted his dreams. Included were copies of his medical records documenting his PTSD diagnosis months before the accident, the police investigation findings confirming his statement, witness accounts that matched his version of events, the legal determination that while he was the catalyst for the accident, his documented medical condition made criminal charges inappropriate. He explained recognizing her at the support group, the shock of seeing Lily's face on another woman, the immediate understanding of who she must be. His initial intention had been simple: deliver Lily's final message and then disappear from her life. "I told myself I was honoring my promise to your sister," he wrote. "But the truth is more complicated. I was drawn to you from the first moment, not because you reminded me of Lily, but because I recognized your grief. It mirrored my own." He detailed his agonizing over when and how to tell her the truth, his growing feelings that complicated everything, his fear that revealing his identity would destroy whatever healing she had managed to achieve. "Each day I didn't tell you made it harder to find the words," he confessed. "Each moment we shared created another reason to protect what was growing between us, even knowing it was built on omission." The final pages revealed what he'd done since their separation, establishing the Olivia Chen Memorial Scholarship for aspiring ceramic artists, entering intensive PTSD treatment, creating a photography series documenting grief and healing in nature. His closing words caught in her throat. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. But I needed you to have the whole truth, not just the part that destroys us." Olivia read through the night, absorbing every detail, occasionally returning to the photographs scattered around her. Her emotions cycled through anger, grief, and confusion. Yet underneath it all, persistent and unwelcome, remained the love she could not eradicate. A stubborn gold seam refusing to let the broken pieces of her heart fall completely apart. Dawn found Olivia still awake. Marcus's letter read and reread until certain passages were committed to memory. As morning light filtered through her studio windows, she made a decision. If she was to move forward in any direction, she needed to verify his account independently. She showered, dressed, and drove to the Port Haven police station. The officer at the desk recognized her immediately. In a town this size, everyone knew the story of the Chen twins. "I'd like to review the reports on my sister's accident," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The request was unusual but not prohibited. Within an hour, she sat in a small conference room, a folder of documents before her. The clinical language of the police report matched Marcus's account with eerie precision. The time, location, sequence of events all aligned with his letter. Officer Brennan, who had been first on scene, stopped by while she was reading. His face softened with recognition. "I remember that night clearly," he said, uninvited but seemingly compelled to speak. "The man was covered in her blood, still trying CPR when we arrived. He kept saying, 'Stay with me,' over and over. When we told him she didn't make it, he collapsed completely. Had to be sedated at the hospital." Olivia nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. Her investigation continued methodically over the following days. She tracked down witnesses mentioned in the report: a retired couple who had been driving behind Marcus, a teenager who had been walking his dog near the accident site. Their accounts consistently matched his version. The medical evaluation from his therapist confirmed his PTSD diagnosis and documented episodes similar to what he described experiencing that night. The neurologist who had examined him afterward explained how trauma can hijack the brain's normal functioning, creating moments where past and present blur catastrophically. Each verification should have provided clarity, but instead left Olivia more conflicted. The facts aligned with Marcus's account, yet understanding the truth intellectually did nothing to resolve her emotional turmoil. On the 7th day of her investigation, she drove to the cemetery where Lily was buried. The familiar path to her sister's grave felt different somehow. Her steps heavier with new knowledge but paradoxically less burdened. She sat beside the headstone, tracing the engraved letters of her sister's name. "He kept his promise to you," she said aloud, her voice breaking the cemetery silence. "He told me it wasn't my fault." Wind rustled through nearby trees, the only response. "But I'm still not sure I can forgive him," she continued. "Or myself." From her bag, she removed 2 items. A bouquet of white lilies, which she had learned from Eleanor was Marcus's ritual offering at this grave, and a small ceramic dish she had repaired with gold. She placed both before the headstone, the juxtaposition striking in its symbolism. As she sat in contemplation, a new understanding gradually formed. She and Marcus had been prisoners of the same moment, serving different sentences for the same tragic accident. His cage had been guilt, hers grief. Both had been locked in a past they couldn't change, unable to move forward. The question now was whether either of them, or both together, could find the key. Forgiveness is perhaps the most difficult art of all, harder than repairing broken pottery, more challenging than capturing beauty in darkness. It requires us to hold 2 seemingly incompatible truths at once: that we have been deeply wounded, and that healing might require releasing our grip on that wound. The paradox of forgiveness is that it benefits the giver more than the receiver. It doesn't erase what happened or minimize its impact. It doesn't even require reconciliation. What it does is free us from being perpetually defined by our worst moments, whether as the one who caused harm or the one who suffered it. Have you ever had to forgive something that seemed unforgivable? Or needed forgiveness yourself for something you couldn't undo? What did that journey teach you? Share your experience in the comments. Your story of forgiveness, given or received, might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. 2 weeks after reading Marcus's letter, Olivia returned to her studio with purpose. The destruction from her breakdown remained largely untouched. Broken ceramics, torn photographs, shattered tools scattered across the floor. Instead of cleaning it away, she began a methodical collection process. She gathered fragments from every corner of the studio, sorting them into categories that represented different chapters of her journey. Pieces from her early work before the tragedy, fragments from the dark period after Lily's death, shards from her collaborative pieces with Marcus, broken bits from her destructive episode. Each fragment told part of her story. Together, they created a complete narrative, not just of loss and betrayal, but of creativity, connection, and resilience. The idea had come to her gradually. A single, massive Kintsugi installation that would incorporate elements from every phase of her artistic life. Not restoring what was, but creating something entirely new from the accumulated debris of her experience. The process was slow and meditative. Each piece required cleaning, its edges examined for how it might connect with others. She worked without sketches or plans, allowing the fragments themselves to suggest the emerging form. What began to take shape was abstract but unmistakably organic, a spiraling structure that seemed to both implode and explode simultaneously. As she worked, Olivia found herself engaging with memories she had previously avoided. Each fragment triggered recollections. The blue-glazed shard from the first piece she created after moving to Port Haven, the distinctive red clay from the workshop where she and Marcus first collaborated, the porcelain with Lily's favorite pattern that she had smashed in grief. The application of gold became a ritual of integration. Each seam represented a connection between disparate moments of her life. Joy linked to sorrow, creation to destruction, love to loss. The gold didn't hide these transitions but celebrated them, making the connections between life's contradictions the most beautiful part of the whole. After 3 weeks of intensive work, Olivia faced a final decision. Among the photographs Marcus had sent was one he had taken of her hands working, capturing the precise moment when she applied gold to a broken seam. Her fingers steady and sure despite the delicacy of the task. She had the image printed on ceramic, then deliberately broke it into pieces before repairing it with gold and incorporating it into the larger installation. The completion of the piece coincided with the anniversary of their exhibition opening. Olivia worked through the night, applying the final gold seams as dawn broke over the Atlantic. Exhausted and emotionally drained, she stepped back to view the finished work. What she had created defied easy categorization. It wasn't beautiful in any conventional sense, yet it possessed an undeniable power, the authentic record of a human heart learning to hold both brokenness and beauty, both grief and love, both past and future. She titled it simply, Integration, Self-Portrait in Broken Pieces. Eleanor's expression when Olivia asked for Marcus's address confirmed what she had suspected. The older woman had maintained contact with him throughout their separation. "Are you sure?" Eleanor asked, studying Olivia's face. "No," Olivia admitted. "But I need to do this anyway." The directions led her along increasingly remote coastal roads until pavement gave way to gravel, then dirt. The cabin perched on a rocky outcropping, its weathered shingles and salt-stained windows suggesting decades of enduring Atlantic storms. Olivia parked but remained in her truck, gathering courage. Through the windshield, she could see a path leading down to a small, sheltered cove. A solitary figure stood at the water's edge, camera raised to capture the sunrise illuminating broken shells washed ashore by the night's tide. Her approach was silent, feet instinctively finding secure placement among the rocks. Still something, perhaps the photographer's sixth sense for changing light, alerted him to her presence. Marcus turned, camera lowering slowly as recognition dawned. The shock on his face quickly gave way to wariness, then resignation. He clearly assumed she had come for final closure, a last confrontation to end whatever remained between them. For a long moment neither spoke. The only sound was waves against stone and the distant cry of gulls. The awkward silence stretched between them, 2 years of unspoken words creating an almost physical barrier. "I received your package," Olivia finally said. "I read everything." Marcus nodded, his voice rough when he responded. "I'm sorry. For all of it. I wanted to hate you forever," she admitted. "It would have been easier." "I know." His smile was sad, self-deprecating. "I've been trying to hate myself, and even that doesn't work." They stood in silence again, but something had shifted, the first tentative step from accusation toward understanding. Olivia reached into her bag, removing a folder of photographs. "I've been working on something new," she said, offering them to him. Marcus accepted the folder with careful hands, as if it might contain something fragile. His eyes widened as he viewed images of her installation, the massive spiral of broken pieces united by gold, the integration of elements from every phase of her artistic journey. "You used everything," he observed quietly. "Even the pieces you destroyed in anger." "Even us," she confirmed, indicating a photograph that showed his image of her hands, broken and repaired, incorporated into the larger work. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. Marcus's eyes met hers, a question in them he didn't dare voice. "I don't know if I can ever separate you from the worst day of my life," Olivia said, the difficult truth finally spoken aloud. Marcus nodded, acceptance in his posture. "I understand. I didn't come here expecting forgiveness." "I didn't say I couldn't forgive you," she corrected. "I said I don't know if I can separate you from that day. Maybe I don't need to." They began walking along the shore, maintaining a careful distance from each other. The conversation that followed was halting, honest, raw, each of them speaking truths they had previously kept hidden, even from themselves. "I've been thinking about Kintsugi," Olivia said as they reached the point where the cove opened to the wider ocean. "It doesn't pretend the break never happened. It incorporates the break into something new." Marcus considered this. "What would that look like for us?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I think I'd like to find out." Their agreement was tentative, not to recapture what they had, but to see if something new could grow from the complete truth. There was no romantic reconciliation, no easy forgiveness, no dramatic declarations. Instead, they committed to honesty and the difficult work of genuine healing. As they walked back toward the cabin, they maintained that careful distance, two broken people recognizing each other's pain, just as they had at their first meeting. But this time, there were no secrets between them, no half-truths shaping their interaction. It wasn't an ending or a beginning, but something harder to define, a conscious choice to incorporate the break rather than deny it, to see if gold could emerge from the seams of their shared tragedy. 1 year later, the Portland Gallery of Contemporary Art hummed with opening night energy. Attendees moved through the space with reverent attention, voices hushed despite the celebratory atmosphere. The exhibition title glowed in simple typography on the entrance wall. "Broken Pieces, Collaborative Works on Trauma and Healing." Olivia's Kintsugi installations paired with Marcus's photographs created a narrative journey through grief, guilt, forgiveness, and repair. Each room explored a different aspect of trauma's aftermath. The initial shattering, the chaotic attempts at self-protection, the gradual acceptance, the painstaking reconstruction. The centerpiece occupied the gallery's main space. Lily's Legacy, a collaborative work incorporating fragments of her possessions, photographs of the accident site transformed through seasons, and written elements from both Olivia and Marcus processing their shared trauma. Visitors lingered longest here, many wiping away tears as they absorbed its emotional impact. "Powerful work," a critic commented to Olivia as she navigated the crowd. "The honesty is almost uncomfortable." "That was intentional," she replied. "Healing isn't comfortable." Across the room, Marcus spoke with a group of photography students, explaining his technique for capturing transformation over time. His eyes met Olivia's briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Their professional relationship had found balance. his visual documentation complementing her physical creations, her tactile approach grounding his conceptual tendencies. Their artistic collaboration had become something neither could have created alone. Their personal relationship remained more complex. The year had brought painful conversations, occasional retreats into self-protection, moments of connection followed by necessary distance. There was no fairy tale ending, no dramatic resolution that erased the past. Instead, they engaged in the unglamorous, essential work of rebuilding. One honest conversation, one difficult truth, one moment of vulnerability at a time. 6 months earlier, they had established the Chen Reid Foundation, offering art therapy workshops for trauma survivors. The first workshop had been held on the anniversary of Lily's death, a deliberate choice to transform the date from one of pure grief to one that also contained purpose and connection. Olivia had come to understand her sister's final message in a new way. "It wasn't your fault," had initially seemed like absolution, a release from guilt. Now she recognized it also as an invitation to live fully again, to stop punishing herself for surviving, for feeling joy, for finding connection. Marcus had found unexpected purpose in helping others process trauma through photography. His gentle guidance helped workshop participants capture their own healing journeys, creating visual narratives that made sense of experiences that defied verbal expression. As the evening wound down, they found themselves alone in the gallery's small courtyard. The spring air carried the scent of blooming cherry trees, a reminder of how much time had passed since their first tentative connection. "Do you think she would approve?" Marcus asked quietly. "Lily?" Olivia considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Yes," she said finally. "She always wanted me to make something beautiful, even from the worst circumstances." "That's what you do," he observed. "Turn brokenness into beauty." "What we do," she corrected, her hand briefly touching his. A small gesture that acknowledged how far they had come and how far they still had to go. Neither was the person they had been before the accident. Neither would ever be completely free of its impact. But they had both found a way to incorporate that defining break into something meaningful, not despite their worst experiences but through them. It wasn't a love story with a perfect resolution, but a human story with a meaningful one. Two people forever changed by shared tragedy, finding purpose in transformation, creating beauty from brokenness one golden seam at a time. True healing doesn't erase our breaks but incorporates them. The Japanese art of Kintsugi teaches us that repair can make something more beautiful, more valuable, more authentic than it was before damage occurred. The gold-filled seams become a map of experience, a testament to resilience, a celebration of history rather than a concealment of it. Forgiveness, similarly, doesn't mean forgetting but choosing to create something new from the broken pieces. It acknowledges the reality of harm while refusing to let that harm determine the future. It is not a single moment of magnanimity but a daily practice of choosing possibility over resentment. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are also the ones who can help us heal. This paradox lies at the heart of human connection. Our capacity to wound and repair, to damage and restore, to break and mend. The people who truly see our pain are often those who have experienced similar suffering, even if they were its cause. Truth, even devastating truth, ultimately frees us from the prison of secrets. Living with partial truths requires constant vigilance, endless energy spent maintaining walls between what is known and what remains hidden. Complete honesty, however painful initially, creates the foundation for authentic connection and genuine healing. Life is simultaneously broken and beautiful. This isn't contradiction but completion, the full spectrum of human experience that makes our brief time meaningful. To deny either reality is to live partially, to miss the complex wholeness that defines our humanity. Finding meaning through our worst experiences, rather than despite them, transforms suffering from purposeless pain into something that connects us more deeply to ourselves and others. Our wounds become wisdom, our scars become strength, our breaks become bridges to deeper understanding. Love after heartbreak isn't about finding someone who will never hurt us. Such a person doesn't exist. It's about finding the courage to be vulnerable again, knowing that pain is always possible but choosing connection anyway. This isn't naivety, but its opposite. The clear-eyed recognition that meaningful relationship always involves risk, and that a life without such risk is ultimately diminished. Hello, my beautiful soul. I want to connect with you in that deep, honest place where we recognize each other's humanity, where we can look at our scars and see not just damage, but the story of how we survived. We all carry golden repairs within us, don't we? Those precious seams where life broke us open, and somehow, through tears and time and tiny steps forward, we found the courage to piece ourselves back together. These golden lines don't hide our wounds. They transform them into our most beautiful features. They whisper our story. Here is where I fell apart, and here is where I chose to continue. I'd love to know about your golden repairs. How has a broken place in your life become a source of unexpected strength or wisdom? What beauty has emerged from your most difficult chapters? Share your story in the comments below. Your journey might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if this story touched something in you, please subscribe to join our community of beautiful, broken, healing hearts. Like and share with someone who might need this reminder that our breaks don't define us. What we create from them does. Until next time, remember to hold your broken pieces gently. They're becoming something more beautiful than you can imagine. I am Grace, from the Chapters of Love.